Greetings, beloved. So glad you're here with us today, especially today. Welcome to Jersey Girl Wisdom on New Thought Radio and Media Network. I'm so happy to be back with you this week and every week at this time. Today is a special day for me and for millions of people, I'm certain, and to acknowledge a pained day for others. However, today I'm just going to celebrate and I'm going to pay attention to the good vibes that I'm feeling, the good vibes that got promoted last night. And I'm going to bring a very special guest into the show today that many of you know, someone that I've had the privilege of knowing now for a number of years and have had the privilege of serving on leadership with. Today, I welcome the Reverend Dr. Kenn Gordon. Please come on in. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. So, if you're the one person listening to the show who doesn't know who Kenn is, Kenn has been a minister for over 28 years in this movement and was a leader in the first spiritual leader for the Centers for Spiritual Living, and he served that role for 8 years, which followed 5 years as a leader for Religious Science International, which turned into the Centers for Spiritual Living International. We have definitely been all over the place. So Kenn comes to us with vast experience, not only as a minister and a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a teacher, and so his depth of experience and wisdom is rich. And I, for one, am excited that you are here with us today. So glad.
Thank you.
And yeah, you're welcome. So, wow, this has been a big 3 weeks. And I'm so glad that I've had the good privilege of being on the show every Thursday, every Thursday after events that have been so meaningful to us. And so I want to read something to you and then give you some room to comment on it. And of course, it feels wrong to not quote our new president first, but I'm going to read to you a little piece of the poem from Amanda Gorman because the woman, this young, stunning, beautiful woman, clearly stole the show. And she said in a piece of her poem, "We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be. A country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce but free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens." So I ask you, what do you think of that? And what wisdom coming from a 21-year-old, 22-year-old to us? And so I want to read something to you. Whoops, sorry, my phone. So Kenn, talk to me.
Yeah. No, I thought yesterday was a banner day for my wife Deborah and I. I've just got to tell you is that a week ago on Wednesday, on January 6th, we spent the day in tears, just absolutely demoralized watching what was going on. And it was one of those shocking incidents that were really peculiar. About 6-7 months ago, knowing November 3rd was coming, I gave a talk in our center in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. And in the talk, what I said was, we were surprised by 9/11. It came from out of nowhere, and it was like, wow, how did that happen? The pandemic snuck up on us, and even though we could have been more well informed, that was a surprise as well. But I'll tell you, the election in November was not a surprise. We knew it was coming, and we had time to prepare and prep ourselves for it. It didn't come out of the blue. It was something that we actually knew was going to occur. And the lead in and the going forward right until January 6th was pretty much a choreographed thing. I mean, it wasn't unexpected. What was unexpected was the in the incredible emotion that came on January 6th. And to see that happen at the Capitol building just shocked us. And I mean, like I said, we're Canadians, so I'm really giving you a view that comes from a foreign country. And then yesterday was like just such a lightning of everything to see that happen. And I thought the inauguration was the best I'd ever seen. It was spectacular. And I too agree that the poet laureate blew my socks off, but so many other people did as well. It was so nice to see people hopeful and moving forward. And you know, I need to share with the American audience, and I know that there's probably people from other countries on here as well, but I need you to know that what happens in the United States for us is the election of the president, for example, and the vice president is probably more impactful on our lives in Canada, and I think most of the world, than the election of our own leadership in a lot of cases. The amount of outreach and the amount of strength that the US has is astronomical. And so the world follows it very, very closely. And yesterday was a spectacular banner day. And there was a lot of American backpacking, patting, patting everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be aware of the fact that the same people who brought us Donald J. Trump are bringing us this. And it has been a crippling circumstance for the last 4 years. And prior to that, it was wonderful for 8. And then there was a period of time before that, which was questionable. And the world is really looking at it and wondering just how much hegemony the US is going to be able to contain and continue to hold on to. And so, as a Canadian watching it, and believe me, I've spent an incredible amount of my life in the US, and most of my friends are American. So, I mean, I'm closely connected. But I'm knowing nothing but the best for this administration. And I'm trusting that 2 years from now, 4 years from now, and 8 years from now, that this continues on, that there is this continued goodwill and world leadership that is showing up in the world. Because if it doesn't, then I'm worried where the next powerhouse in the world is going to come from. What's going to happen with it? So the business that attended yesterday in the inauguration affected the entire world. It just didn't affect you in New Jersey or you in Denver or you in Los Angeles. It affected everyone throughout the entire world. And so good on you. Congratulations. And there's some healing to be done here. I think it's the old Lucy show, Lucy, you got some splaining to do. Well, there's some explaining to be done, and it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds in the next 4 years.
Right, I agree, and thank you for pointing that out, and to all of us, and especially those of us who are fortunate to have a platform, be that platform a radio station, a ministerial pulpit, a blog, a podcast. I think it's upon us to pay attention. You're right, to the group of people that originally got Trump in office. It is important for us now to reach our arms out in a way where we are including all of them and finding where that conversation has to be and what healing is necessary. Because to deny that they have a point and to deny their right to want to be heard is ignorant. Yet, I do believe there's a better way to bring the conversations to the light than what happened on January 6th. But all humans and all citizens of this country should find a platform where they can be heard in a way that we can do it with a sense of respect and decency. And I know that might sound a little Pollyanna-ish, but I won't I just won't let go of it because I know that there's work to be done. There is definitely work to be done. I want to read one more piece to you from the last words of her poem. She said, "When day comes, we step out of the shade, aflame and unafraid. The new day blooms as we free it, for there is always light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it." And I think that is such a beautiful compliment to us as a science of mind teaching because we talk about embodiment, right?
Yeah,
And
for sure.
so it was. I'm sure this rang to the ears of anybody who's ever studied the science of mind.
I think the whole poem rang to anybody who
Yeah.
is consciously aware and awake to what's happening and what's going on in their lives and in the world around us. What's been occurring is not just, like I said earlier, a national thing. It is a inner thing as well. There's huge amount of insight to be gained from the last 20 years, the last 4 years specifically, for all of us, no matter where we are or how we are. Um, the thing that yesterday gave me was it gave me a greater sense of hope, and I wasn't, because I think I did, but it really instilled in me that light at the end of a tunnel that I could see. And I'm not just talking political here now. I'm
Right.
talking, the pandemic. I'm talking everything that's occurred for the last 24 months that's been going on in the world around us. The awakening of things that are moving forward, the awakening of minorities that are beginning to find a voice and being able to step up, the awakening of the possibility and the potentiality of equality, of really creating the just society that everybody talks about all the time. And this manifestation has been tremendous. And for me, it was like putting a light out in front of me. I'm a person who's always believed the importance of always having something in front of us that we can move to, having a goal or an aim. As a matter of fact, I remember that when Hannibal crossed the Alps and took his troops over the Alps, which was a miraculous thing at the time, that the way that he kept the troops going was he had a group of people who went ahead several miles, and they would build large bonfires so that the troops could see the fire off in the distance and in the night and know where they were walking to and know that that was something that they were headed for. And I think humanity needs a light in front of us. We need that flame in front of us so that what we can do is head towards it and be diligent and tenacious and disciplined in the way that we're going to attempt to reach it. And I believe that what happened yesterday was a bonfire was lit. And that bonfire was lit so that we can all see the direction that it's headed in. And that doesn't mean everybody's going to go in that direction. But for those of us who are, what it means is that we have something in front of us that's clear that we can head towards. And that's both on the macro and the micro. On the macro, it's a movement and a place for society to go to. On the micro, it's a place for the individual to head to that's filled with hope, filled with possibility, filled with potential, and filled with the promise of joy, the promise of something greater coming into our lives.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. 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 Um, I wasn't. Yesterday was wonderful, and I cried all day. But I want to speak to one other thing, and if your wife was here, she might have a different thing to say about it. But I couldn't. The second Kamala Harris came on screen, I sobbed. As a woman who has been a little stubborn about my place in the world and has worked hard to earn by right of consciousness my role, to finally have that person, just as you're saying, that light. So I was watching I picked up my granddaughter and we were watching the inaugural, the ceremony and all of that. And when we spoke about the tomb of the unknown soldier, of which she did not know, I spoke about Arlington Cemetery because they had visited, and I have a brother who's there. So that became fascinating to my grandchild. And then she turned to me and she said to me, "Could I be president?" And of course, the answer would have always been yes, of course. But now it's yes with some certainty. And that strikes at the heart of me, and I think millions of women everywhere, and especially women of color. And for me, that in and of itself was a celebration. I want to take a moment to say that if you're just joining us now, you are listening to Jersey Girl Wisdom on the New Thought Radio and Media Network. And if that you will find any value in any of the shows that happen all week long and the music that is played, please consider this station as someone worthy of your giving, your financial giving, because they are doing good work in the world. And I want to remember to also tell you, especially with Dr. Ken here, that he has now joined a group of us that every Saturday morning, it's 10 a.m. Mountain Time, I think. Is that right? Yep, 9 a.m. Mountain Time, that we are taking you through the Science of Mind textbook. So as you can see, the whole team of us that are there, we intend for it to be educational and fun at the same time. So please join us every Saturday morning. This particular Saturday morning is Tracy Brown. You will know her. She's a beloved leader in our movement. And then I'll be taking the baton from her on January 30th. And I don't even know what I'm speaking about. We'll find out then. We'll find out when I'm closer. But I want to read to you now from Biden, from Joe Biden. He said the cry for survival comes from the planet itself, a cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism that we must confront and will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul, and secure the future of America requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. So I know that that's something that we as religious scientists speak to all the time. I'd love for you to comment on that.
Okay. Um, the first thing is that I don't think that there's any question in anyone's mind that there is a huge separation of belief system that's going on right now. There's a disconnection that seems to be taking place on the secular plane, on the on the on what's in front of us right now, what we can see on the physical. But the unity is happening all the time. What we're seeing is we're seeing the reflection of ourselves in everything that's going on in the world around us. It really is that deeper connection. We're seeing a little bit of ourselves in all of the feelings and the senses that we have, and the healing, the wholeness that comes from it, or that must come from it. And believe me, it will. It'll come from it whether we want to go along with it or not. It's going to be made so. The unity of like Michelle was talking about, the unity of genderism, the unity of racism, the unity of the acceptance of everything that's happening is going to occur. And anyone who doesn't agree with that is simply trying to fight the universe itself. And believe me, they will lose. But what is happening is really a reflection. It's a mirrored image of what's going on within each and every one of us in one way or another. And I mean, I'll own it from my point of view. Watching a day like January 6th means that I literally have to spend a week in prayer in order to get myself balanced again. Watching a day like yesterday means I literally need to spend a week to get myself balanced again, because I have a tendency to flow in all these different directions according to my opinion, as opposed to according to my belief and my thought and knowing what's true. And what's true is that the goodness of life is unfolding in everything that shows up. And so, how do I attune my energy so that I view the world from the perspective of love as opposed to from the perspective of separation? Dr. Ernest Holmes, who was the founder of Science of Mind, he said that the only thing that, and I paraphrase, the only thing that a frustration or a condition is the separate is our perception of a separation from God. And we throw that word God in as though everybody's going to accept what it means, but it is a separation of life itself. We're viewing the world from a separate point of view. And so how do we connect ourselves with that again? And the answer is to go to our practices. And every time I find myself enraged by a circumstance or situation, to really heal that enragement, and then lo and behold, watch that healing expand out from me and expand out from others in order to be able to embrace the macro from the micro. I hope that made sense.
Yeah, it does. It makes me. It always brings me back. There's two analogies that we could go to, and one of them I'd love to tie in a minute with you, which is the difference of the absolute and the relative. That in and I get well. Let me say to it right now. In the absolute, unity exists. In the relative is where the struggle exists, and those are terms that not maybe all of our listeners can relate to. It's a big concept. But I have this is oversimplified, yes. But Don Miguel Ruiz speaks to about not taking anything personally. Now that sounds that's a very overused statement. But this is where I want to bring it in what we're talking about. Balance and a center point has a particular feeling. And when we're in that feeling, it's a feeling of calm and groundedness and living in right relationship with all of life. And you're right, because on January 6th, whether the upset, let's use this for a moment, a direction. If it pulled you down, then that means you were taking the information personal and you were knocked off your balance, your center point. But even if you were elated, then there was power given to something outside of you and you were pulled off your center point. To me, that idea of not taking something personally is to be able to stand in a grounded place at all times saying, this is not good, it's not bad, it just is. And when we're there, then I can look at Trump supporters or Biden supporters and look and say, humans, the evidence of love, and not lean in one direction or another. That's how I personalize what it is that what you just said. Um, because yeah, if we are pulled all over the place, we're in trouble. We become victim of what's happening all around us, and I think that's what you're saying.
Yes, it is. And there's a how do we deport ourselves in these circumstances? The practice that you were speaking of is a practice that's individual to each and every one of us, and the job is for us to be able to learn how to do it in a way that is still productive. Here's what I'm challenged with, or here's where my challenge has been coming from and what I'm dealing with. I'm not going to lay it on anybody else. When I witness an experience like I've done in the last 4 years, when I witness racism and misogynism, when I witness things and happenings and actions from an individual that has such an impact on my life, that I know are actions that are not in alignment with the universal good and the universal flow, I have a responsibility to call that out.
Hmm.
I have a responsibility to say, no, that's wrong. No, that's not true. No, that's a lie. No, and the tendency for humanity to fall into that place of being less than in the power structure is a problem. It's an issue. That's why Vice President Harris said, she the story goes, she told some every time she would talk to a group of women or girls, she would say, no matter where you go in life, whenever you're there, you belong. You are the leader. Throw your shoulders back and present yourself. And yesterday, you could see her when she was taking the oath, put her shoulders back and be present, and not diminish herself because of something external that's putting her down. She knows the difference between right and wrong. God, all you had to do is watch a couple of the Senate interviews that she did, and you'll know that she knows the difference between right and wrong. So for me, my question is, how do I view that, and how do I stay in the balance of life and articulate and emulate the energy of spirit as opposed to emulate the energy of the violence that I'm seeing? How can I see someone who is violent? How can I see someone who is atrocious and not call it out? And the answer is you have to learn to call it out from the Sacred Heart. And the challenge that I've had in my life is learning how I can look at that and how I can still speak to it without buying into all of the energy, the anger, the emotion that I feel when I see it happen. And perhaps other people are like this, but it definitely is for me.
Well, wouldn't it be interesting if we could take the concept of the absolute and the relative and place it on top of what you're saying about that balance? Because the fact remains that it's in the absolute, all is good. In the relative is where the calling out has to happen. And I think that it's important for us to be able to flow in between the absolute and the relative, because in the relative is where I say, yeah, no, that's not acceptable. It's where the line in the sand must be drawn. So, but to draw that line and to do the calling out from a strong, grounded place and not from a hysterical place, I think that's the critical thing here.
That's a great word, hysterical. And I think you're right. Um, except that I think you should always call it out. I think that we should create a new norm in society where you always speak the truth. And I'm not talking about the truth you made up. I'm not talking about the truth that suits your opinions. I'm talking about the truth that matches the values that you have in your life. Yeah, it's really time that we begin to change our opinions to match our values rather than changing our values to match our opinions.
I think a
And
lot of people in this movement are. I got to be honest, and I've had to struggle through this. I think a lot of people who consider themselves spiritual are afraid to toe that line of calling people out because it's not spiritual or it's not kind. Well, the truth is, if we're being kind, we're going to be kind to ourselves first, and we're going to create boundaries, and certain boundaries must be created, and that's a loving action to take. It's a loving action to take. It's not an ignorant action to take.
right. And so you get to the point of when you see something that is obviously not in alignment with your belief system, not your personal belief system, but your value system that's set up. Well, how do you go about and call that out? Because if you call it out with the same energy of anger or hysteria, pardon me, that you're accepting it from, what you're probably doing is you're probably just fomenting the negative rather than the positive. So, the practice that I've been doing for the last 4 or 5 years is I use this little analogy and metaphor. When I see an activity or an action in the world, whether it be lying or misogyny or racism or whatever it is, you put your own brand on it. When I see that, I practice trying to speak to it with love, but still pointed out that it's not constructive to be there. And the metaphor that I use is that when my 5-year-old grandson runs with scissors, I go and take the scissors away from him. I don't take the scissors away from him in anger. I don't take them away because I'm mad. I don't take them away because I hate him. I take them away because it's necessary to be taken away for the protection of him and everybody else who happens to be around that. So when I see the activity of someone like the President of the United States or the Prime Minister of Canada, or you name it again, when I see that activity and that activity doesn't match the values that I know to be true, it's up to me to take those scissors away, but to take it away with the same energy that I take the scissors away from on my grandson, which is with love, concern, and care. And I found that by doing that and looking at it from that perspective, when I'm conscious and aware that that's what I'm doing, when I'm not ranting or raging about something, that what happens is the energy is actually quite effective as opposed to negative. And I believe that when we, humanity, learn the art and the skill to be able to do that, that's when we'll see a major transformational point in our society. And I think that that's what we're witnessing the opportunity to do right now. And that's why I applaud President Biden, because he seems to be doing it right now with regard to the last administration in a very effective
Mhm.
manner.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I want to jump in. I had a similar experience with my grandson not so long ago. He was touching something he shouldn't have touched, and I had to create a boundary, and I was strong about the boundary. But I realized that in setting that boundary, he still knew I loved him because I could tell that moments later when he came up to me. And the same thing happens. I had a practitioner one time who was consistently late, but she was a beautiful person, and I didn't want to give her a lot of criticism. So I thought to myself, what can I do to lift her and still hold and have boundaries and have requirements? And I walked up to her post celebration and I said to her, in order for you to serve here, I need you to be the best version of you that you can be. And it worked. And I also remember one time speaking to Andrew Harvey, who we had hosted at our community, and he had had a really unkind conversation with one of my volunteers. Now, I might get upset with somebody, but in New Jersey, you don't get to criticize my peeps because I get fiercely protective. And I remember he said to me, well, I'm just trying to help you guys. I was just, so you'd be more professional. And I looked at him and I said, that's not the effect that you thought it had. And I left it at that. And the next day he thanked me. So there are ways to communicate, to hold people's feet to the fire, to create boundaries, and to still and to still but still do the work. The only question left, though, Dr. Kenn, is what happens when there's a clash of values? What happens then?
Well, yeah. And there are universal values and there are individual values. And so one kind of has to lean into it. And that's why I keep saying there's a difference between my opinion and my value. My teacher used to say, there are certain principles in the universe that must be obeyed, period. And that's what we teach in Science of Mind
Hmm.
on new thought on a regular basis. And so, what he said was, and you can never compromise principle. Never, never, never compromise principle, even for a good reason. And, I see that all the time. When I was spiritual leader, one of my jobs was to write white papers or essays, basically, on what was happening in the world and put it into a perspective from Science of Mind. Not a perspective from Kenn Gordon, but a perspective from what we hold to be the universal truths.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how much feedback I would get from it. Negative feedback often, if it wasn't perfectly worded or put forward. So wording became an important aspect. But the bottom line was, it was important for me never to compromise principle. So if I saw gay bashing or racism in the world, it wasn't for me to personalize it. It was for me to point out our teaching, our tenets do not support separation. It does not support violence. It does not support, you name it. And to be able to point that out and present that. And the flack that came was the flack of life. And it was okay. And so it's really important for the individual to be clear on what they hold to be true as universal truths versus what their individual truth is. You might want a pipeline to go through. I speak from a Canadian perspective. You might want a pipeline to go through because it's going to aid and support. And so how do you define that? That is not a universal principle. That's not worth getting too upset about. What's worth getting upset about is imprisonment. What's worth getting upset about is an energy that is destructive. What's worth, et cetera, et cetera. And so for me, it's really a matter of defining what it is I hold to be true. And once I have that defined, sticking to it and making sure that it works effectively in all areas. What Troward say? It has to be for the good of the individual and harm no other person. I mean, that's a powerful statement to set a value on.
Well, in my classes and my teaching and everywhere, to me, if you had to only have one banner to function under, it would be do no harm.
Yeah.
In my world. And so I had somebody on Facebook just before I was getting ready for the show today, and it's somebody from my old from my old stomping grounds in my town. And I was on Facebook. I cried all day and was the best inauguration ever. And he asked me what drugs was I taking, and I thought, oh, okay, got it, right, got it. And so then I wrote back to him and I told him exactly why, because mine was not a political celebration, because I don't claim to be a Democrat. Mine was a celebration of joy and love and peace and the projection of harmony and the inclusion of so many people of color, so many people, Hispanic people, that, and having a community that is as diverse as mine is. I mean, I could get tearful looking at it now. I'm going to be overjoyed to see that displayed in our government and now included in our leadership. And so for me, that was the joy. Biden, he's going to have to prove himself. Just getting in is nothing, right? That's nothing. You got in. Now what? Now what? Now is the test of time. So I'm gonna start bringing us to a close. I love to have. I know we're gonna be seeing you on Saturday mornings, and but I'd love to have you back again sometime. A month or so from now, and continue this conversation. I would like to dig deeper into values and principle. I would love to talk more about that if you are up for that, because that's a real. That's extremely abstract in so many ways, because even the person who wrote to me and asked me that on Facebook, he has values, and his values he doesn't think are being reflected right now. So I'd love to pick that apart with you, because I think that's the tearing inside of each of us when we have to make peace within ourselves. So don't go away yet. I just want to say one more time, you are on New Thought Media Network. This is the Jersey Girl Wisdom Show. I'm Reverend Michelle Wadley, and this is Reverend Dr. Kenn Gordon. We are here every Thursday at noon. And once again, I want to say to you, please offer to support this this radio station with your donations, because it is valuable. It brings high principle to the world in a way that nothing else has. I always every week want to thank Reverend Robert Brzezinski for his for his brilliant vision of this possibility. And Dr. Kenn, this was great. This was absolutely great. I know with you, it just all I have to do is light the match, and you're off. I trust that you're full, and you have all your years of wisdom and teaching to fill up the space, and that's so valuable. Thank you for being here. Any
You're
last
welcome.
comments? You want to leave your American audience with anything? Any one last thought?
No, I think I'm complete. I think that there's been a pathway established, and that it's a good pathway. And I know too that we're probably preaching to the choir. That most of the people who are on this show probably already are connected to what we believe or what we know to be true. And so keep on doing the good work. And I'm not
Yeah.
just you, but all of you, all of the
Yeah.
audience. Know you're
Yes.
loved and honored. Bless you.
Yes, thank you. And yes, please know you are loved and honored, that you're brilliant, and that we can't do this without every single one of us. Please, I know that there's a little bit of Jersey in each and every one of us. Be well. See you next Thursday. Thank you. And thank you again, Dr. Kenn.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.